Uh, Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. If someone from Asia is listening to us online, I hope you can hear me well. I hear some surrounding noise around, but I hope the audience here physically and at home can hear us well, perfectly. As I have been introduced, I'm Jordi Torrent, Head of Strategy at the Port of Barcelona. I'm very happy to be moderating this session together with two colleagues and friends. Above all, let me introduce them to you first. We are here with Ms. Jinsun SHIN, General Manager of the Port of Busan in Europe, based in Rotterdam. Hi, Jinsun.
Hello, hi.
And Mr. Luc Arnouts, Vice Chairman of the Port of Antwerp-Bruges. Welcome and thank you for being here.
Thank you. Okay, thank you.
As you know, this session is on examples, experiences of port authorities that have expanded their activity beyond their borders. And I think here we have two very good examples of this, one from Europe, one from Asia, one that started earlier. The Port of Antwerp-Bruges started earlier than the Port of Busan, but the Port of Busan has been extremely active in the last 2-3 years. But before we go into the subject of how they have done it, why they have done it, where they have done it, and what lessons have they learned that they can teach us, the other port authorities and other companies, I would like them to introduce their ports briefly in 5 minutes or so that people that don't know them can learn a little bit from what they are nowadays. So please, Jinsun, please go ahead and explain us in 5 minutes approximately, who is the Port of Busan nowadays?
Okay.
Please, go ahead.
Well, actually, thank you so much. Then, as you might know, Busan is located in a very southern tip of the Korean peninsula. So, see that Korea is really, really far from here. Well, 14 hours, the flight, the hours from here to, really far East Asia. Then we are surrounded by 3 seas. And in the northern part is, blocked by North Korea. So for this country, the port is very, very important. So without the port, well, we cannot export, or even we cannot import. So the port has been, really driving force for our economic development. So in case of the Busan, we are the Korea's #1 port, and also the world's, 6th or 7th, the port in terms of the container handling volume. So last year, we handled more than 30 million TEU, which is quite, big numbers, considering the size of our nation or the economic power, etc. So in case of total cargo, more than 50% is the transshipment cargo. And as I mentioned, as the #1 port in Korea, most of the import and export cargoes are using the Busan port. So in Korea, we have the manufacturing bases nationwide, but as I mentioned, 80% of the import exports are using our port. And Busan Port Authority, we are the state-owned company under the Ministry of the Maritime Affairs and Fisheries in Korea. So we are mainly in charge of the operation and management of the Port of Busan. And we are also doing some commercial activities and digital innovation and old port redevelopment. But as Jordi mentioned recently, it said, just 2 or 3 years ago, we started to advance or look into the other areas than the Korea, because the new government, under the new government policy that state-owned company should provide or should support the Korean companies when they advance into the other countries. That's why, under the government policy, we are doing some, the overseas investment project. That's why, during the last 2 or 3 years, we have been very aggressive or, proactively doing that kind of this, the project. Yes.
Thank you, Jinsun. As maybe you will learn during today's session, we have a very good relationship with the Port of Busan, very close relationship, even business-wise. And I think I have to say she has been very modest. Okay, and if you look at for instance, if you do look at the classification of world ports in containers, only 2 ports of the first 10 ports in the list are not Chinese, which is the Port of Singapore and the Port of Busan.
Right.
So I've visited Busan 3 times in the last year, and I have to admit it's impressive what they have done in the last 10 years, 5 years, and 2 years. So from Northeast Asia, let's move into Europe, into Antwerp,
Right.
Zeebrugge, that has done something quite unique as well recently, and maybe Luke can tell us more about it, which is merging, or in the process, I don't know if it's completed, merging two port authorities. And now they will be very close to Port of Rotterdam as the first port in terms of tons in Europe. But I will let the floor to Luke to explain briefly about the port of Antwerp, Zeebrugge, or Antwerp-Bruges. Please,
Thank
Luke,
you.
go ahead.
Thank you, Jordi. But first of all, thanks to everybody here. It feels like our fan club is in front
Right.
of us. So
Getting more,
thanks
right?
a lot.
Getting more.
We also welcome the millions of people looking from home. So thank you. Jordi, the port, and I will be brief, I promise. Although it's a story that could take long.
Yes.
No, we're very proud. I call it a new kid in town because it's really a new port. In the month of May of this year, so we are really talking about a recent event, the Port of Antwerp and the Port of Zeebrugge merged into one entity, so we're also operating one integrated port. I think the message I want to bring, it's not like a holding with two daughter companies, it's one integrated company, so we really want to build one strong player in the field. For those who are less familiar with us, Port of Antwerp and the Port of Zeebrugge were two ports active on all commodities, also quite active in terms of innovation and digitization, but there were some specializations, and this created a very interesting complementarity for the two platforms to join into what is called now the Port of Antwerp-Bruges. Antwerp very strong in containers and hosting the largest integrated chemical cluster. On the other hand, Zeebrugge very strong in Ro-Ro, the largest Ro-Ro port in the world, but also one of the main players for the import of liquid natural gas into Europe. And looking at today's political situation, you can imagine that that business is growing and under all kinds of turbulences. So joining both together, we have created a port that is handling about 300 million tons, second largest port in Europe, employing together about 175,000 people, so it's an important economic engine as well. But what I want to say as a closure on the introduction, the drivers for our merger are particularly interesting, I think, also for what's going on here in this smart area we are in. And I think we all feel the vibrations of this smartness, don't we? Yes, please. Yeah. So one of the drivers was, of course, to financially healthy entities, to create a more robust entity, financially robust entity that can tackle the challenges of today and tomorrow. Secondly, we see integration all over. Horizontal, vertical integration of our customers, of the stakeholders in the port. So also looking at port authorities, we thought we need to get stronger for the future. So that's also a driver. But the main driver is related to energy and digital transition. On the energy transition, the hub of Zeebrugge has a large experience in importing this LNG and has room for investment in other molecules to be handled there. Antwerp, of course, has this big chemical cluster, which requires a lot of green molecules. So in the energy transition, we are convinced that the Port of Antwerp-Bruges can play a major role as an import hub of green molecules into Europe. Because to decarbonize, and that's what brings us all together, also here, all the smart initiatives, or a lot of them are related to the decarbonization. So we feel that beside the local production, there will be need of massive import of green molecules, and that's where the Port of Antwerp-Bruges wants to play a major role.
Thank you. Look, I think really what you are doing in this process, or what you have done, what you have completed in this process, is a lesson for other European ports. What has happened previously, Copenhagen, Malmö, on the North Sea, and your case even further, is very good examples of looking at the needs of the economy and acting accordingly. So this was the introduction. The topic of today obviously is not what we were saying now, it's international expansion of ports, and both ports are an example in this respect, as I said. So I will try to start with a question to both of them on why this, and maybe We can change the order, maybe Luke can start now first. Why did they decide to expand their port activity beyond their borders? No? And you, Luke, obviously, as Vice President of International Relations and Networks, are the most indicated person to answer. So this is the question: why did you decide to expand the activity beyond the borders of the port and the borders of the country where you are?
Now that you're getting serious, I take my notes.
Wow, okay. It's like a paper, right?
It's quite a preparation,
yes.
I made. So. Okay, why? Well, we have been active on the international scene since decades already. And initially, it started purely from a marketing point of view. Promoting, branding the port around the world. And to that purpose, we developed two activities. It was training and consultancy. We have been doing that for decades. And it helped us to brand the Port of Antwerp, later on now Port of Antwerp-Bruges, worldwide, as a center that has expertise, that has know-how, and also that is walking the new trends. So we've been doing it for many years. But there were other reasons to do this. If we look at the cargo flows, then there are certain areas in the world that are particularly interesting for Northwest Europe. And so one of the criteria for our international development was looking at those areas in the world that have a specific interest for us, where we have either a strong position or we believe we can get a strong position in terms of cargo flows. So that has been another reason to walk away also, or to develop activities in that specific areas in the world. A third reason I want to mention is we also wanted to create investment opportunities for the companies active on our port platform. The big companies, of course, they have no problem to develop and to find opportunities around the world. But if you look at mid-sized companies, and when talking about Belgium, we have to be a bit moderate. We don't have the really big companies, except for a very few. We have a lot of mid-sized companies that really appreciate the support they can get from a port authority with being on a certain location in the world. So we are helping them in finding opportunities for investments abroad, and thus also creating their international footprint. The next reason relates to our own staff. We felt at a certain moment that we need to make our own people more international by creating opportunities for those who are interested to spend a part of their career somewhere else, learning and hopefully coming back. And that proves to work, they're coming back. So from an HR point of view, that was also a driver to go international. And then a last reason refers to revenue diversification. We are a modern port, but if you look at our business model, it's still based basically on two sources of income, which are port dues paid by the carriers and concession fees paid by those who invest on our area. This model will probably last for a while, but the growth is not much anymore in that model. You can't say, I raised the rates with 25% to say something. So we need to look for new sources of revenue. Going international is a part of that ambition.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Jinsun, what about the Port of Busan?
Well, before I explain about our, the reason why we did the, overseas investments, that, Port of Busan Authority, we were established in 2005. Then in 2006, as the same as you, in order to foster our human resources more international, we established our, the overseas, the representative offices. The first one is in Shanghai, and the one is the Tokyo in Japan, and the other one is actually, the London, UK, and the other one is Los Angeles in America. But in that time, the representative office, we sent our people to each region, but at the time, our main role was just, the research and also look around the, the global trend of the port and maritime insight, and also deliver that report to our head office, and also extend our network, and et cetera, et cetera. But while I was in London, actually, the office has been relocated from London to Rotterdam because of the Brexit. So after the relocation into the Rotterdam, I got lots of the demand from the Korean companies staying in Europe actually. Because, well, particularly, as you mentioned, small and medium-sized companies. Well, the big companies, they have a really big asset or a capital to invest directly. However, small and medium-sized companies, well, they would like to find out some, long-term and stable logistics platform. And also, they have, lack of some human resources and as well as the investment capital. Therefore, they are asking us, well, is it possible to establish some, the stable and some long-term logistics platform on behalf of them, because we are the state-owned company, and also all these cargoes are coming through the Busan port. So that was the main reason why we have started to think about, yes, is it needed for BPA to do that kind of the overseas project or not? That is the one reason. Then another one is that the port, even though our infrastructure is in the Busan, but the port should be connected by the big ships, right, globally. But nowadays, okay, the maritime and the logistics is like one package. Really, it cannot be separated. That's why by doing some logistics business, we thought that okay, we can expand the Busan port logistics network to globally. That was the main reason to expand our, our logistics platform or network with other ports, etc. And the third reason is that, as I mentioned before, the government policy. The government policy said that, as the state-owned company, we should do some work as a, kind of, social responsibility. So we should do something for the Korean companies, particularly the exporting companies. That's why that is, in line with the government policy as well.
Okay, I hope I could hear you perfectly. I'm not so sure. There's lots of noise around. I had a second question, but in fact you have answered already, which is, and I'm going to put it on the other way around, no? Which is why you invested in the places where you invested, no? And you have more or less answered already, no? So I would say it on the other way around, no? Were there lots of projects that you analyzed that you disregarded because there were other priorities? To understand, for the audience to understand, no? Do you look at many projects before you decide to invest in one? Or do you disregard 10 projects before you decided to invest in Oman, in Brazil, in Indonesia, etc.?
Well,
what is the success ratio or the no?
So as of now, we are doing a logistics warehouse management and operation in Rotterdam, the first project. And the second project is Barcelona, right? So before
I didn't know.
Oh, really? So before we decide the location of each project, well, at first, okay, we saw the throughput, the volume between Busan Port and Port of Rotterdam and Port of Barcelona. And also we have analyzed about at least more than 5 years of the container volume trend, well, which has been increased or which has been decreased, or what would be the other external effects or factors for that kind of a trend. And based on the analysis, we also collected all the exporting companies from Busan to each of the European port, for example. Then we visited all the companies and have some interview. And also we finalized about demand. So once there is a demand, then we can go. Well, all the business should be same, right? So before we decide, Rotterdam and Barcelona, well, sorry for the Antwerp, but the Rotterdam has been the most cargo with Western Europe. And Barcelona has been the most cargo in the Southern Europe. That's why we selected Rotterdam and Barcelona as our first the investment port, actually. So that was the main.
Look, what about you?
The starting point basically is what supports the development of the platforms of Antwerp and Zeebrugge. So we start with the cargo flows. Actual, but mainly future cargo flows. What cargoes can we attract from a certain area, or what are, and then I refer to the whole hydrogen story, what new cargo flows will appear. So we're starting from market analysis to see, okay, worldwide, looking at all the regions, what is the prospect? We have a model for that. What's the growth of the GDP what share of the market we have already, what are the prospects from experts for that specific country. But from that we derive a list of target countries that we believe can strengthen our platforms. And from that we start looking for opportunities. Because that I also have to say, you can make a wonderful model, but in practice it's often opportunities that appear, but then preferably in the regions that we are interested in. Now for the type of business we do, and I'm referring to consultancy, training, port management, this often works with tenders. So this is also something, yeah, that's an instrument, that's public, so we follow very closely what's going on in the world in terms of tenders related to port management. And that guides us as well. But again, we will take our list of regional priorities to make a selection, and then we try to win the tender. I'm not going to answer our success rate because competition would be so jealous. So,
but what maybe we have to remind the audience because we didn't in which countries, because we didn't at the beginning which countries and ports both of you are present. So just to remind the audience because maybe they don't know. So you mentioned a few places, Jinsun. So maybe you can list the countries and places where you are present and the ones you intend to be present in the future.
Well, as of now, okay, as the just the representative, as like a liaison office. Now we have in, as I mentioned, Shanghai, Tokyo, and Los Angeles, and yeah, Los Angeles. But in terms of the business-wise, one in Rotterdam, and also one in Indonesia, and also one in the Los Angeles, and also we are doing some the market research for the investment in eastern part of the US. So.
And Barcelona.
And Barcelona, right.
What about you, Luke?
Yeah, different layers. We have, like many ports, we have port representatives in 17 countries around the world. So that's a permanent presence of the Port of Antwerp-Bruges in these countries. Very quickly, going from west to east. So in the United States, we have representation in Brazil, in Europe, in different countries. I won't go into detail there. And then in India, China, Russia, still for the moment, still. Close to Korea, but not in Korea.
Okay.
And in Africa, through our daughter company, Port of Antwerp-Bruges International, we have a strong presence in different countries. So that's about the general presence when you refer to projects. But I think it will come later on the business model we have and the different type of services. But with an actual presence, with a team, we are present in the Port of Duqm in Oman. We are present in the Port of Açu in Brazil. We are present in the Port of Cotonou in Benin. We are present in Suriname, and we are present in Chile. Okay. And then in different African countries, we have running projects. But the full team is basically Brazil, Oman, and Benin.
Okay. So let me ask you about Oman that you mentioned, because I know that the Port of Rotterdam has also a presence in Oman. No? Both ports have decided to invest in a quite unique country in the Persian Gulf, no? Because it's very different from which is a good position both politically and. Well, can you speak more about the project in Oman, maybe?
Yeah. So in Oman, why are we in Oman? And I have to say, Rotterdam was first, but both of us were visionary. Okay. So we started, I think now about 8 years ago, with our presence over there. Why? This is a very, let's put it like this, it's a liberal country, so things are possible. And it has an ideal location in our thoughts, both for transshipment, but also as the gateway for a country in full development. And now, 8 years later, we are present in the Port of Duqm, which is in the middle of the country. It's a green port, there is nothing. Today the port is running, and behind the port, and that makes it so interesting, there is a huge industrial area, but really huge. If you look at the Port of Antwerp, we've got 12,000 hectares of land, but there we are talking about a multifold of that, only for industry. And we start the first chemical industry appearing there. And that, of course, is now extremely interesting for us, cargo flows-wise, to have these chemical flows from that part of the world into Europe via Antwerp-Bruges. So it's a region that has its own development, and that's really happening today, but it also has this big transshipment opportunity. So that's why we are in Oman, and we are practically involved in, we have a shareholder, we are 25% shareholder of the entity that runs the Port of Duqm and the area behind it. We have a member in the board of directors to make it practical, and we are involved in the commercial management.
Now, Jinsun mentioned about future investment in the east coast of the US, in the middle. Sorry, going back to you, Luca, for instance, do you have any new projects in sight that you can mention? Or maybe you cannot because of confidentiality issues, or are you taking a break after those investments to see what is your current?
No. Quite recently, we had this. It's a very interesting question. We had this discussion, should we now just maximize what we have and also get it, let's be honest, get it more profitable? Because we are generating some dividend there, but could be more. But we had an in-depth discussion in the board of directors, and we have decided not to do this, but to really continue the development. And the business plan is very ambitious. We want to triple in the next 5 years with our presence around the world.
Okay.
So because of the importance of remaining a world player. It's really driving us. And with the merger, we feel we have more means and more capacity available to now really take the opportunities. So the decision has been taken to move forward and not to maximize what we have. No.
There's an expression in Korean, I'm learning a little bit of Korean, very hard at my age, which is pali pali, which in Korean means fast, fast. And that's how they deal with us. They make us
push,
work very fast.
Push.
They push us, which is good. Knowing this business culture that you have in Korea, faster and faster. You mentioned the US a second, but I'm convinced that you're going to do more things very fast and very soon.
Right.
Is it the case? Or
yes.
And a second question that I'm going to ask Luke after as well. Do you receive lots of pressure from your bosses from the ministry on the profits of these projects?
Yes, right.
Or not?
Mm-hmm. Well, actually, as I mentioned, the Port of Rotterdam, we just rent the whole land from the Port of Rotterdam. Then we just constructed a warehouse. Then the operation is done by the private sector, the Samsung SDS, actually the Korean logistics companies. And the second one is the Barcelona. So we just established a joint company together with the Port of Barcelona together. So we are also leased the warehouse to one of the Korean logistics operators as well. That is also supporting the Korean logistics companies and also Korean exporters. Then another one is Indonesia. It is also same model, the logistics platform. And in case of the US, nearby the Georgia or Atlanta area, also there has been some continuous and strong demand from the Korean companies. That's why we are doing some logistics, the center or etc. However, we are considering to expand our business or investment category. So not only for the logistics warehouse, but only for the terminal investment or terminal management or even consulting. So as of now, we are working together with the Iraq government together to support or to provide some consultation from the construction and also from the operation or how to manage or how to commercialize the port of the ARFO actually in Iraq the kind of things. So we are doing some consulting businesses, and as I mentioned, still we are looking for any further investment opportunities, not only for the the logistics sector, but also the terminal investment and also investment opportunities.
Can I raise the question
Yes.
here? For me, seeing that port authorities
Yes.
get involved in logistic business is a bit strange. I like to understand, because we are into port management, because we think our skill is to manage a port as an authority. But you guys are going into logistic business itself. What's the driver, basically, to do that?
Well,
Entering your customer's world.
Yes, but in case of Barcelona, we are not directly involved in the operation, right? We just in Spain or in Southern Europe, it is a quite new area for the Korean companies. Well, according to our data, there are lots of, the export volumes from Korea to Southern Europe through the Barcelona. But Korean companies, they cannot find out there are any, Korean logistics companies or any, Korean platforms. So they are asking us, so is there anything they find out? So we also work together with the Cote together and find out something. But, well, it's time for state-owned company, okay, the BPA, to involve and also provide logistics platform strongly supported by the Port of Barcelona. So as I mentioned, we are not directly involved in the operation. We just lease the platform to the Korean logistics operator.
Okay, and you have no intention to move really into the operational business itself?
No.
Okay.
But in case of the Rotterdam, well, the operation is done by the Samsung SDS, but BPA is involved only for the commercial activities. So we are now targeting not the big companies, really small and medium-sized Korean companies entering into the Europe, because they have a really small amount of volume and they have no right, the connection with the European, the parties. That's why we involved and provide some consulting services, and also we receive their, the request and etc.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
I think we have like a couple of minutes left. You avoided my latest question, so I'm going to ask it again.
I'm sorry.
But to both of you, no, don't worry. To both of you, how important is it for your organizations in each of these projects in general to earn money, to make a profit? Or is it really a secondary issue, or is it on top of the list when you think about an investment? I guess we have 1 minute for each other, so if you want to...
For the Port of Busan, whenever we do this kind of, the overseas project, we should get the approval from the central government. So the two parties, one is the Ministry of the Administration and Planning, the one is the Ministry from the Maritime Affairs. And now, the Port of Barcelona and Port of Rotterdam, two projects are selected as one of the government policies. So we are now monitoring by the central government whether we are making profit or not, or, our warehouse project has been really, helpful for the Korean companies or not. So every month we made a really beautiful report and also send the report to the government, etc. But in terms of the revenue, yes, we should make a revenue, but not, like a private company, like 100% or 200%. But we should not be any negative or loss. But same, or we should make anyway the revenues, and we should also pay the dividends on, etc.
Look, what about you?
It's similar. There are different criteria that drive the decision, and profitability is absolutely one of them. So we have created a specific daughter company, which is 100% owned by the Port Authority, which is a limited company, so which really needs to make the money to make itself run. But on the other hand, there are also other criteria which relate to things we have been discussing, like exposure. Does this bring us positive exposure in the world and thus support the development of the port itself? Does it help to attract investors to our port platform? So that will be taken into account as well, and could justify a lower profitability than what a normal player would expect. But profitability, yes, absolutely. And it's not easy, if I can make a last remark there, not easy in the shareholder structure we have, because our owner is the city. And the city needs money all the time. They need money for all kinds of things, like a new football stadium, a new school, a new hospital. So if, as a full daughter company, profitable daughter company, you really have to convince them that investing abroad makes sense and is better than transferring all the profit to the mother to build the hospital. And that's a wrong example, because that's sensitive. Build a football stadium.
Football stadium.
So comparing those two, you really need to prove that the money you're going to invest is going to generate a broad return, including a financial return.
Okay, so thank you both for the session. I think we are on time. This means Smart Port finishing on time and not late. Please give a round of applause to the two panelists. Very interesting. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And I think we have to leave it here, right? Okay, so thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good job.